And so I have quite a conversation that I'd like to share with you. Something that transpired between Janet Museveni and her daughter Natasha, and it seems quite painful, which touched me as a mother. I have 4 children, and so, you know, as we build a life, as you have children, you raise them, you begin to think about, how do I leave them? If something happens to me today, how do they remain on this earth? Do we hope very much that somebody will do to them as we did for their person or themselves. Everything that we do, I believe, comes back to you. I try to avoid, hi Gwen, I try to avoid intentionally doing things that will come back negatively, because I know that how they come out from me, so I will get them back. And so regrettably, a conversation has been transpired between Janet and Natasha, which I'd like to share with you. It also gives us some insight on how much damage Museveni and the family, or the so-called last family, what they have done in the region, far and wide. In fact, I can share and expound on some of the activities so that we can all try to relate to the areas where we come from, or what we've heard, or the stories that we were told, but truly what they meant. So Natasha and Museveni and Janet had a conversation where Janet laments on, you know, how many mistakes they have made in the presidency since 1986, or whenever Janet joined Museveni and became part of this leadership. Okay, and they said, Janet says they've made a lot of mistakes, they've killed a lot of people, they've stolen a lot of cattle and goats. Apparently, when they first came, they started with taking on people's, or stealing. They really came with nothing, as you know. You have seen pictures of the Musevenis when he was in the bush, even while he was in Europe before he came to take over the presidency officially. The photos show a very, very poorly put together human being, you know, the dress code, and it didn't look well and all of that. So Janet speaks about the cattle, or the animals that they stole. Apparently they started by stealing a lot of goats, but then they realized that goats did not have enough returns, and so then they continued to steal cows. It is no wonder that most of Uganda, for example, recently in Karamoja, which they said Karamoja, in Acholi, where I come from, we used to get told that the Ojongs or the Karamojongs were the ones who came and stole cattle from our villages. Okay, I remember vividly my parents referring to that, or village mates or clan mates saying, Ojong was here, they came and took cattle from the yard or whatever. But apparently all the cattle that was being taken was taken by the Museveni people. So not even the Karamojongs of that time. And you know, around the time that we were born, the 80s, 1980, 85, 86, you know, they started before they even took power in 86. So we were born into theories that said the Kejongs or the Karamojongs were the ones coming to steal cattle in northern Uganda, West Nile, and all the other regions around. But they were the ones, the Musevenis, were now starting to steal. So that's a story Janet is telling her daughter, Natasha, lamenting about how poorly they have built their history. Another thing she mentions is that Museveni arrested a lot of children of people. She puts it in that way, stating that a lot of Ugandans were arrested, whether they committed certain crimes or not. They were taken anyway, and taken because whatever the Musevenis thought about that they did, or Sorry about that. They're possibly tampering with my live right now. I actually noticed that my ex was logged into, there was an attempt to log into my ex account as well. But let's just keep going. If it goes off, I'll try again. I'll try to log back on. Another thing that Janet reports that they've done is that they've arrested a lot of children of Ugandans. I don't know about you, but I remember those days when these people just came. They would come from house to house and take people and arrest people. My father was in the military. Arrests were like so rampant. It didn't even matter if you did something or if there's a witness. So try to think about your circumstances, how you grew up, how things happened. That is one of the things that she tells Natasha as a story or telling a history of how they came about to where they are now. They also say that they impoverished a lot of people, and it was a joy to them to do that. They tried to make Ugandans so poor because they felt like they would benefit more and sustain themselves better if they did that. They got everything. She says that they got everything that they wanted, but they were still robbed of joy. They were not happy. Even now, Janet says they are not happy despite having everything that they could have imagined they would have. Now she knows that they're hated, especially her father. She tells Natasha that her father is hated so much by all Ugandans of all walks of life. This was not before, but they've arrived in a place where no matter what the father does, no matter what Museveni does, the hatred in Uganda has brewed for so long that people will probably not change their minds. Natasha chimes in and says, but I think Muhoozi is hated more. And Janet responds and says, no, Muhoozi is a simple alcoholic. He just showed up in the scene. But all this while, it's been your father and I and our family. Everything that we have done, everything that is our record as a family has mostly been performed by your father. Your father has killed a lot of Ugandans, people in Uganda, a lot of people in Kenya. As you know, when they were coming into power, Museveni even tells a story of how he came into Uganda, did really bad things and ran away. He was sent on deadly missions. As you know, he worked a lot with Julius Nyerere of Tanzania at the time. And because he wanted to, for example, the story of Janani Luum. I've done a video about this, but the story about Janani Luum is that when Museveni was in, when Idi Amin was still in power, okay, Museveni was in Tanzania. He tried to figure out how he can best destroy Amin because Amin was a tough one for him to try to crack. He did successfully with Obote, the second Obote, when Obote came back after Idi Amin. That one, it was easy to come because he had infiltrated Obote's government. However, when Amin was still in power, Amin took no nonsense from anyone, especially not from somebody like Museveni, because Amin had known that Museveni is a foreigner and he's wanting to come in and take over Uganda, which he didn't want to give up. So Museveni tried to figure out how best he can destroy Amin so that he will never lift a head in Uganda. Sorry about about that. Somehow my phone went off, and I don't know why, but please come back whenever you can. So anyways, I was speaking about Janet Niluum, and how when in recollection, Janet speaks about people like Janet Niluum or places like where they've killed people in Uganda, people in Kenya, Rwanda, Sudan, Central African Republic. As you may know, Central African Republic is where Joseph Kony is. Okay. It doesn't surprise you to understand that Joseph Kony is Museveni's project. The LRA war was all about Museveni's plans to try to destroy northern Uganda because he was fearing for them to regroup. Other places that she says is Somalia. As you know, Somalia is where a lot of the reliance on peacekeeping in the region. The West gave Museveni a lot of responsibility there, but in what he went to do there, he tried to maintain a source of income by continuing the war and expounding on what the issues really were. Okay. Iraq, they also went. Tanzania, obviously, because Museveni came through Tanzania, so therefore anything that was not that was standing in his way, he took care of. In Tanzania also, you will note that there's a mysterious passing of the previous president and the incoming of Suluhu, and how it is similar, the occurrences that have happened in the recent elections in Tanzania compared to the recent elections in Uganda on January the 15th. So the relationship there in Tanzania and the killings makes sense. In Namibia, those are the pathways to get him into Uganda and getting into the Ugandan politics. He went to Namibia and also went to some other countries south, also in South Africa. You know, it doesn't surprise me. In Burundi, actually yesterday on Women's Day, the women of Burundi and Congo came together in a voice, a voice together, and had plaques and cards saying Kagame should leave Burundi and Congo because the women have gone through so much. They've lost children, they've been raped, they've been hurt, and all that. So this adjudicates what the occurrences and the atrocities that this one family has continued to perform. All that blood, Janet continues to say, millions of people dead, the spirits are now haunting them. They're haunting them. They have blinded them from trying to do the right thing, to try to clean up their image. Museveni tries by all means to try to come back into the hearts of Ugandans, but it has not been possible. All because of the people that they've hurt, the people that they've killed, you know, all of that. Janet agrees that they can no longer escape it. It is true that everything that they've tried to do to clean up has not worked. Every international law is pointing at them, is a guided missile towards them. Okay. And they cannot defend themselves. No matter, you've heard about the, I saw DW Africa posted, the voice of Museveni, or a response to the UN Security Council on Museveni's atrocities in South Sudan. Museveni is denying that they weren't part of that, despite the videos showing the military people on the ground shooting live bullets at innocent Sudanese people with badges from Uganda. You know, the UPDF badge is on the uniform, but Museveni still tries to deny that. The whole world knows that Museveni's atrocities are all over East Africa, all over Africa. Anywhere where he has stepped foot or pretended to be on a mission to try to keep peace or maintain peace or bring peace has been false. Senator Jim Risch today came up with a response to him about Museveni being an exporter of violence in the region. He has been labeled appropriately because any place around Africa, East Africa, part of the South, including South African Republic, Museveni has had a hand somehow. So it doesn't surprise me that the Western world now knows, even if it doesn't stop him from continuing to commit these atrocities, at least they will not continue to fund his bloody hands to continue to hurt people around the region. Janet is very stressed, and she says that it would have been better if they had left power in 2016. I think Museveni had said that it would be his last election or the election before. Janet regrets having continued after 2016 and on and on and on. She says that she has aged more than 30 years than she would look. She looks worse than, as if she's older by 30 more years, not just what her age is. They should have left in 2016. And now they're stuck with a win which they stole from His Excellency Kyagulanyi Ssentamu. Janet said this by herself. She said, we are stuck with a win that we have stolen. We stole an election, and we cannot even live freely despite being the so-called elected individuals. Okay, we have no peace. We have no freedom. We stole this thing hoping things would get better, but we don't have any peace at all. The whole world is looking at us as the most terrible people that have ever lived. Okay? And she says that it truly looks like they have reached their demise. She knows there's no hope. It seems to her that this is the end of the road for them. This is the end of their life, and their history ends as an evil one. You know, it makes me sad, not that I care about this family, but I think about everything that we do before we leave this earth. We try to leave our children, and I know that Museveni might have intended it that way as well, but the way he went about it, the way he hurt people, this was bound to happen. It was bound to happen that he would be ousted painfully and terribly from Uganda. I also learned that the Electoral Commission of Noop has all been abducted, the whole team. I understand they had been being spied on because their cars were bugged with cameras and recorders. And so they're all at Mbuya barracks where they've been beaten really, really, really badly. They were asked to turn in His Excellency Kyagulanyi Ssentamu, and they didn't. And so because Museveni wants to pound the facts out of people, anybody that he'll arrest or try to take from Noop or anywhere where he suspects there's knowledge of His Excellency Kyagulanyi Ssentamu, he believes in beating somebody to get the answer. But truly, a lot of people don't have connection with His Excellency at this point because he's a brilliant human being. He has not shared those facts. In fact, today I did hear that people are suspecting that he has been caught, but I want to assure you that we have spoken with him and he has not been caught. He's safe. He is in Uganda, giving Museveni the headache of his life, but he has not been caught. Okay? So all the plans that we've been telling you about what Museveni plans to do, I'd like to make known that even if it doesn't happen as we've said it, they may regroup, they may change form, they may delay. So with that said, Museveni has asked that the bombings that we had talked about before, that he has ordered his M23 and whoever he works with, the Damuliras, to resume bombings in Uganda. And he would like to have at least 9 districts bombed. The biggest one should happen in Kampala. Okay? He wants to do that so that he can cause some kind of the perfect environment for Museveni to swear in is a lockdown situation for Ugandans. He hopes that at some point he can cause something, either cause some sort of a disease that will get all Ugandans locked down so they don't travel on the days that he will have his swearing in, that he thinks he will. Or what would be a good option is the fact that people will be terrorized to come out in the city, to come out and do business as usual. What he'd like to see is people stay away from the roads or streets, and not have business as usual. That's why they're stopping people from selling on the streets or being around Kampala. That is why Owino has all these issues surrounding him, trying to kill, to burn the shops and destroy and set up roadblocks, basically for the elites to stay at home. Hi, Lillian. Bring them on camera. Okay. Thank you. Yes, I'm working on that. So what the perfect scenario, the perfect recipe that Museveni thinks to be able to swear is to have people at home, either bedridden or somehow afraid of being hurt in the city or in town. So there's going to be bombings that are coming back all over Uganda. In fact, he has requested that now that there's heavy rains and floods in the city, areas like Bududa. So please share with anybody, if you have people from the Bugisu region, anybody from Bududa area. Museveni says since there's floods and lots of rain, they should also add the bombing factor to try to cause mudslides. You know that Bududa is prone to that. However, we have now realized that there is also instances where it has been initiated by the Musevenis, okay? He has been bombing to cause landslides so that he can get some money in relief, disaster relief in the region. But inform everyone, if you see signs of things that look a bit strange, I'm going to share what they look like on my page. Stay on the lookout for that. But inform people in the Bududa area to keep their eyes out for that. The Uganda Airlines plane that takes the route of London, Uganda, or London and other destinations has been sold over time by the Museveni government. And I believe the final payments are going to come in. Therefore, that airline will no longer be available on that route. So if you notice that we have lost the London route, airplane, Uganda Airlines, or from London to whatever, but from Uganda, just know that it's been sold. Museveni wants to leave Uganda in tatters, even if he knows that His Excellency is coming, especially because he has to leave the presidency. He wants to leave Uganda torn completely. And so Bobi Wine will have a lot of work to do. So the plans are still possible. They want the biggest bomb to happen in Buganda region so that Museveni can say that M23 has retaliated and attacked Uganda to try to cause them to, Shadia, I'll read that in a moment. So he can try to cause insecurity and claim that M23 is retaliating in the region in Buganda. Obviously, they'll come out and speak because he is M23. Museveni is M23. Museveni is ADF. Museveni was Joseph Kony or the LRA war. Museveni was the Kiwetere in Kichwamba. Museveni is all of these things. He cooks up things so that the world can see that, oh my goodness, Museveni is the rescuer, and Ugandans can feel like, goodness, this man brought peace, this man. All that talk about peace is not because we really had instability. Because before Museveni, Uganda was peaceful. When he came is when everything started to happen. And before he came, he was the one coming to cause trouble and run away. Okay, so in the video where he says, I was sent to do deadly missions. I came to Uganda to perform deadly missions and run away. It is true. It is very true. That's where the lives of the likes of John and Iluwum were lost because of him coming in stealthily, performing these dirty acts and going back and running away. Okay. I mentioned to you that Muhoozi is unwell because of what he did in Magere at His Excellency Kyagulanyi Ssentamu's home. As you know, they're constantly performing witchcraft or seeing witch doctors. He did what was not part of the prescription that caused him to get his gearbox injured. So he has quite some strenuous pain, some difficulty being normal. It's no wonder you haven't seen him on Twitter responding to anything or even starting something. He usually is the starter of all these issues. So they're trying to treat him. They've tried to get him out of the country to get some sort of treatment, but they want him to still continue being legitimate. So he's going to come out. I don't know if he's going to be wearing a kanzu or what, but he's coming out with certain projects in the city to try to win people back to his father or to his government. He's coming up with some construction work, public works, job creation and things like that, just to win the hearts of Ugandans. Something I forgot to mention yesterday is that besides the Muhoozi medical camps that he's going to be starting up in the next few weeks, there's a military woman called Charity. Charity replaces Nalweyiso. I understand Nalweyiso did a lot of charity work on part of the NRM or UPDF. But so now Charity is coming on board, and yesterday a few videos came up showing her in the ghetto structures or communities, talking about medical camps where she's going to provide treatments or vaccinations or medications to some youth in the region. I would like to say this to Ugandan youth. Please do not fall for anything NRM, because none of it is good for you. In this attempt to say they're coming to bring medications or treatments to the youth around the ghetto areas or Kampala or those busy neighborhoods, they're really coming to test some viruses to see how they will work long term so that Museveni can swear in peace. Okay? Yes, Katongole, 2 in 1. I've heard that expression. That means hermaphrodite, right? I think so. Anyways, so these medical camps where Muhoozi is going to be involved with Charity, they're going to inject the youth with HIV viruses. If you think back in northern Uganda, especially the Acholi sub-region, they did inject a lot of the men and women who were elites or part of the business community or the educated community. They were injected with the HIV virus. Even if they went sick with a headache or a cold, they were injected with the virus. And so somehow they ended up dying, not even knowing how they got sick. So the youth of Kampala, Uganda, any region, please don't take the treatments that they're offering you. If you're sick, try to do what you normally do to try to get yourself better. Because if you rely on the Museveni people and what they're claiming to give you as medication or treatment, you will be in a lot of trouble. Okay? These treatments are going to be spoken about by the religious community or the pastors and so on. Kingdoms are going to talk about them. Some charity organizations are going to also support these efforts. But remember, Museveni controls all these arms of parts of the government or parts of the people. You know, the churches are not on your side anymore. Charity organizations may not be. All the religious sects in Uganda are not really part of the people or supporting people. So be very careful, because just like they do inject prisoners or political prisoners while they're in prison with HIV, they want to now do it explicitly outside of the jail cells. Okay? So be very careful. Museveni has asked Kabanda and other media apologists to try not to tame social media or information on what's happening in Sudan or what's happening in Congo, because they don't want Ugandans to learn the defiance that's going on in those areas or the facts about, you know, for example, what came out today from Senator Jim Risch or the publications from the UN Security Council. They're trying to keep all of this information under the hush-hush, but obviously we have social media is on our hands. Keep informed, stay informed so that you know what you're doing at what time, and stay safe. They're going to come out and try to shut every media station that is going to publicize the Congo or Sudanese war. Like I said yesterday, it is already happening in Sudan. They're already there clearing land. They're already there killing people. They're already there stealing cattle from southern Sudan. It is a matter of time before they block the Nimule border, and that's a big sign for my brothers and sisters in northern Uganda, because that means it's going to be coming to you. The reason for blocking those is because they want to make sure messages or news does not travel across between South Sudan and Congo or northern Uganda. So once that happens, people, please document everything that we've filed with all these international communities or human rights advocacy agencies. Need evidence. We don't just say. That's why Museveni is having the hardest time possible, because we have evidence of all sorts and manner. So document. You don't have to say anything. You can set up cameras. You can record if you can, but most of all, be safe first. Okay? So share as widely as possible. People of Bududa, Museveni is coming for you. They're going to bomb the hills or the slopes of Bududa to try to cause a mudslide in your region because of the rains. Museveni wants to expedite the mudslides. Even if they will come naturally, he wants to get ahead of them. Okay? To try to cause disaster, to divert attention, and also to get funding for himself from international agencies for disaster. Okay? So one of the other things that I'm still doing some research, I want to bring you the specifics, is the requirement of a president and how a president should look, or how a president should behave to represent a country appropriately, because I feel like it is one of the things that is lacking a lot in Museveni. His dress code and the way that he sits and the way that he attends interviews is inappropriate by the Constitution. I'm going to look that up and I'll come back with that. But he is misrepresenting Ugandans or Uganda as a country. According to our Constitution, he's supposed to dress well because we pay him a lot of money to buy suits and look sharp and represent the country, Uganda. But nonetheless, he's not the president, and we know that. But it's something to keep in mind while he's acting that way. I think I have given you everything I have for today. Rest assured, His Excellency Kyagulanyi Ssentamu is safe. They almost nabbed him, but obviously he's a brilliant person. He survived that, and thanks to the military, thanks to the police that wants change, it is impossible that they will get him. I don't believe so. He's safe. There's rumors going on that he's been